we can. Each man must do his bit.
Welcome to another edition of The Public Interest. My name is David Granger, and in this series of programs, we examine matters of public interest. And today we will look at the question of trees. Trees, of course, are public. The indigenous people have a saying, trees hold up the sky. And if you cut down the trees, the sky will fall. Well, maybe not literally, but metaphorically, if we continue cutting down our trees, it would appear as if the sky, has fallen on us. So we need to protect our trees, and we need to understand how important the trees are to us. And when I was president many years ago, I declared National Tree Day. The first Saturday in October is National Tree Day, not National Tree Planting Day, National Tree Day. And the reason is to celebrate trees. Trees are a priceless endowment. Trees are essential to communities, to the country, and to the entire continent. Guyana is fortunate to be part of the Guyana Shield, which is regarded as part of the lungs of the earth, really because of the presence of trees. It's the habitat of an amazing biodiversity. And the trees are vital, essential to that biodiversity. Trees define Guyana. Guyana stands at the center of the Guyana Shield, G-U-I-A-N-A. And the Guyana Shield, which runs all the way from Colombia, takes in parts of Venezuela, almost all of Guyana, Suriname, French Guiana, which is called Guyana, and part of Brazil. So Colombia, Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname, Guyana, and Brazil are part of this Guyana Shield. And trees are the most significant, or probably most important environmental feature in the Guyana Shield. And Guyana is at the center. To the west, you have Venezuela and Colombia, and to the east, you have Suriname and Guyana, French Guiana, and to the south, you have Brazil. So we are really the hub, to use a popular term. And we are members of the Treaty of Amazonian Cooperation Organization. And we're all committed in the Amazonian Cooperation Treaty to preserving our trees. Well, I don't want to judge other countries, but in Guyana, we must intensify our commitment. And trees, grow in the forest. And Guyana has different types of forests. There's not just one forest. We have the dry evergreen forest. We have mangroves, which are different forests, of course, they're mostly on the coastline. We have swamp, or what the other countries call marsh. A different type of tree, would grow in the swamps, but they're very important too for, snakes. And in fact, the kanji pheasant, is essentially a swamp bird, and it lives in trees, it feeds in trees, it breeds in trees. You don't find kanji pheasant in the savannah. You find them up Kanji Creek, like Coney Creek and Bobby's River and so on. And you have the rainforest and you have seasonal forests. So there's not just one type of forest. There are, 5 or 6 types of forests. And they cover up to now, about 80% of our territory. And as you know, our insightful former president, Desmond Hoy, committed 371,000 hectares of our forests, of our trees, an area that is about the size of Malta, to be used as a model for conservation and sustainable development. And that is the Irokama forest, of course. So trees are important to us. And of course, we need to preserve our trees. We need to use our trees in a sustainable manner, but we need to conserve as well. Our Constitution, the supreme law, commits to the conservation protection of the environment. And let me quote from the Constitution: in the interest of present and future generations, don't think of yourself, think about your children and grandchildren. The state shall protect the environment and make a rational use of its land, water, and mineral resources, as well as its flora and fauna, and it will take all appropriate measures to protect and conserve the environment. This includes trees. Trees provide environmental services to the earth, the entire earth, to the globe, by storing carbon and restoring the balance of oxygen and humidity in the air. When you see what is happening in some countries, in the Sahel, because of deforestation and in the light of global warming, there's nothing more satisfying and enjoyable than to sit on a Saturday afternoon under a tree, string up your hammock, and enjoy trees, enjoy the coolness of the jungle or the forest, or even a park where the trees are located. Our trees in Guyana are the habitat of over 800 species of birds, 179 species of reptiles, 225 species of mammals, and over 130 species of amphibians. We have some of the largest amphibians in the world. We have the largest freshwater fish. We have the largest rodents, the capybara, which people call the watras. We have the largest river otter. But all of these animals need, the protection of trees in order to survive. And this is how it has always been. Guyana is a net carbon sink because of our trees. That means that we absorb more harmful gases, carbon, than we produce. And this enables our government to sell carbon credits. In fact, some of the northern countries, which are heavily industrialized, and other countries which contribute to global warming, would actually pay us to keep our trees intact. So in fact, trees are more valuable standing than being cut down and used as firewood. Something to think about. So we are a net carbon sink. That is, we save more than we spend. And this is very important, not only for us, because human activity, because of fossil fuels, particularly coal and oil, continue to contribute to global warming. And having a large number of trees, heavy tree coverage, helps to mitigate the adverse effects of global warming. And global warming is not inevitable, but we need to ensure that our tree cover is not depleted, because we need the trees to survive. Trees are important to human existence, not only in Guyana, but throughout the Guyana Shield, throughout the continent of South America, and throughout the world. And that's one of the reasons why we call ourselves a green state. That's one of the reasons why the coalition administration, the APNU-EFC coalition administration, drafted the Green State Development Strategy. And that is important because we have to understand, we have to mainstream, green thinking into everything we do, into buildings, into water supply, into public administration, into education, into health. Every aspect of administration must reflect this greenness. And APNU called attention to that in the Green State Development Strategy. Now, we need to understand that our very existence depends on trees. And we know that trees provide food, fruit and other, vegetables. We need wood for housing, and we need trees for medicinal purposes. I think there's a place in Georgetown, Border Street, where people, sometimes even travelers from the Caribbean, will come to get the, different types of herbs and wood, again, produced from trees. We need trees to protect our biodiversity. Trees perform economic and ecosystem services. Um, for example, the regulation of the water cycle, pollination, so that other plants could grow. Uh, they modulate the temperature, uh, especially in the world which is becoming overheated. And even at the household level, even at community and NDC level, if you want to cool down Guyana, start planting trees. That's why we had National Tree Day, so that we can, plant trees to feed ourselves and our children. Imagine during the holidays, children love nothing better than going up a tamarind tree or a mango tree, or a guinea tree, or picking psidiums and so on. But trees are there, to serve mankind and not to be destroyed and cut up as firewood. And they help to cool down the country as a whole. And of course, they beautify our surroundings. What would we be without parks, or parks without trees? It would just be a desert. So uh, trees are important, and they are important economically as well, not just for beauty purposes, but they help to provide employment. And for over a century and a half or more, Guyana's been exporting timber. In fact, the famous Green Heart, which perhaps is being overexploited now, was once exported to foreign countries for use in wars. But forestry contributes over 2.5% of our GDP, over $633 million a year, because of forest products. So it is, trees don't, only perform this beautification. They also perform, they also earn us money. And we continue to explore markets. As you know, the recent visit of President Akufo Addo from Ghana, and also from Prime Minister Mia Mottley, Guyana was able to show how houses could be constructed. Well, we've known that, for 100 years or more. But these could be prefabricated and shipped overseas. And again, timber exports have been valued at over $26.5 million up to a couple of years ago. And we continue to export timber. But we mustn't overdo. We mustn't overdo it. We must be very careful and very prudent in the way we extract timber from our forests. And trees, as the indigenous people say, hold up the sky. So we must not overexploit this important resource. Trees continue to be a source of livelihood for hinterland communities. Food, shelter, medicines, and a variety of forest products support the well-being and the sustenance of people in the hinterland. And yes, over the years, they've been able to manage trees in a sustainable manner. But going into the forest with an axe or a cutlass is one matter. But going with a power saw and a bulldozer, is a different matter. And sometimes when you see the logs being shipped out of Guyana, you need to wonder how long this could last. Sometimes it seems to be something that is unsustainable. So the care about trees is an important part of our present development and the future. Now we need to look at the question of deforestation. At the start of this century, Guyana had the third highest proportion of what they call intact forest landscape, IFL, which is a term used by the environmentalists. Only Suriname and Guyana had, better rates. This is worldwide, and it is quite interesting, not surprising, but interesting, that the three Guyanas, formerly British, Dutch, and French, had the best, or the highest proportion of forest cover on a worldwide scale. But that is starting to change, and unfortunately, it is changing a little too rapidly in Guyana. And the information I have is that Suriname and Guyana, French Guyana, are doing much better than we are doing in Guyana at preserving the forests. And of course, the agricultural expansion, industrial scale logging, fires, and mining and extraction of resources have caused a decline of forest cover and the loss of trees from what it used to be at the beginning of this century. And we have to look at these activities. You know, sometimes the loggers and the miners tell you if you want to make an omelette, you have to break the egg. Of course, you have to break the egg, but there is a limit to the damage we can do to our environment and the destruction of our trees, because the trees are there not only for the present, but they are there for the future. My friends, we have to ensure that the damage to our country and the deforestation which is taking place, especially as a result of careless mining and logging, do not damage our children's future. Maybe up to the present time, you can still boast of having a reasonable forest coverage, but if you were able to visit some of those hinterland areas, particularly some areas of Region 1, Barimo Waini, some areas of Region 7 and Region 8, particularly, you'd see these huge holes in the ground caused by mining, and nothing's growing there. Nothing is growing there. When some of those big mines are finished with their mining, they just leave with their profits and they leave us holes. And someday you'll be going around, telling your grandchildren, this hole, made people in other countries very rich. But all we have now is, a series of holes. And of course, there's no tree cover because they have to clear the trees, to get to the gold. And once the trees are cleared and the gold is gone, well, Guyana has to face the future without that beautiful tree cover that we enjoy at present. So reckless farming, reckless logging, reckless mining could do a lot of damage to our trees, which we need. Trees are a necessity. They're not just beauty, they're a necessity. And sometimes even wildlife poaching, indiscriminate use of chemicals, because in the days of subsistence farming, people use manure and other natural ways of fertilizing the soil. Now they use chemicals, and of course those chemicals wash into the water, and they cause other problems. And it is from mining, particularly, and reckless logging, that we have these catastrophes and the disappearance of parts of our tree population. And of course, the worst case is August 1995. We could never forget that. Omai's gift to Guyana, a big hole in the ground. My friends, we need to ensure that this precious patrimony, this beautiful land, this green land of Guyana, is protected, particularly the trees. Again, I refer to the Environmental Protection Act. And over again, when people speak or write of the petroleum industry, reference is made to the Environmental Protection Act. It is very, very important. We should not ignore that act and the enforcement of that act. So the environment is protected by law. Trees are protected by law. The Forestry Act, the State Land Regulations Act, all of these acts, Forest Regulation Act, they protect our forests, protect our trees. The Forestry Act, for example, promotes the participation and the management of trees involving the residents of the hinterland. So they are part, because most of the trees are in the hinterland. The residents there are part of the regime for protection. It's not just a government, but it must be an arrangement under which there is a free, prior, and informed consent by the hinterland people, so that we don't just send in miners and tear up the land. But the people who've been living there for hundreds of years must be part of the protection of the land and, of course, the trees. And at one stage, and I hope that that time will come when the central government sees it fitting to have parks, natural parks, reserved in every region. Every region should have a park, which is part of the protected area system, so that some regions may have, extensive wetlands, maybe East Berbice quarantine, swampy lands. Those can be parks because they have a particular type or particular types of trees and flora and fauna in those areas. And I would like to see a protected area in every region, and every region is large enough to have a protected area in which trees would be protected. No, that day has not come, but I still have the Green State Development Strategy in my mind, that every region, every RDC must be proud of having a protected area, a park, not only for animals, but also for protection of the trees. And some of the trees are unique to those regions. And again, the hinterland dwellers must be involved in protecting community forests, community trees, and regulating the extractive industries in those regions. Again, all this must be done while still preserving traditional rights and, of course, providing for protected areas. We cannot go on just, being directed by, a single agency in Georgetown. Every region has to have responsibility for its own regional protected areas. And in the past, when I was in office, I had called for something called, plans of action for regional development. And each region should have a plan of action for protecting its trees. PARD, that's what it's called, Plan of Action for Regional Development. And every region, even regions that were not administered by chairmen from the APNU, were happy that this plan of action would give them some autonomy and authority in directing the affairs of their region. Some trees are being heavily exploited: Baromali, Green Heart, Purple Heart, and Mora. We have about 120 commercial species, and we need to ensure they're not overexploited. It takes a long time for trees to grow. You can cut it down in a few minutes or hours, but some of those trees that are being cut down have been growing for decades and maybe sometimes for centuries, and all of that could be gone in a matter of hours. The Guyana Forestry Commission has the authority to manage forest concessions, and of course, they are guided by government policy, and they've set aside, about 4.5 million hectares for commercial logging. And we must make sure that commercial logging does not overtake, the environmental concerns of the people. Our trees can thrive if central government and regional administrations, the RDCs, enforce legislation, if they emphasize sustainable agriculture and facilitate the management of water systems, if they enhance forest carbon storage to combat climate change, and if they ensure the preservation of our biodiversity. My friends, our national anthem, the national anthem of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, speaks of the green land of Guyana. And that green land is provided by and guaranteed by our trees. everyone, every Guyanese, should strive to ensure that future generations can inherit our precious patrimony, trees. Precious patrimony. Happy National Tree Day to everyone. Thank you. May God bless you.